This was something that was talked about a while back, and it's something that kind of surprises me. But apparently, we're going to be getting a sequel for Lollipop Chainsaw sometime within the next couple of years or so. It's expected to come out by the time the PlayStation 6 comes out. I'm not saying it's coming out around the same time frame, but by the time we get a Lollipop Chainsaw 2, the PlayStation 6 will have launched already because the PlayStation 5, I think, is towards the end of its life cycle in retail. I wouldn't necessarily say like towards the end, but I mean, it's been out long enough because after like every 6 years or 7 years or whatever, Sony comes out with another PlayStation console. And I feel like we're getting close to that time period where Sony is going to like reveal and launch another game console. And I'm not exactly sure whether or not Lollipop Chainsaw is still a huge attraction because I remember the remastered version of the game came out back in 2024, Lollipop Chainsaw Repop, and it flopped in terms of sales. I don't think it even sold half a mil when it came out. But the thing is, the reason why the remastered version of the game happened was because of the fact that it's a cult classic. A lot of people looked at the game when it came out back in 2012, and the game sold more than 1 mil during the PS3, Xbox 360 era, and I think one of the reasons why a lot of people found it appealing back in the day is because it was something that was new. You had a cheerleader as the main protagonist in a high school setting. Um, Pretty much you know, killing off zombies and stuff like that, and hack and slash, action, and then the whole vibe was dark and apocalyptic, and I don't know. It looked like something you would see in a survival horror game, and I think it's something that had not been done before. The combination of things I just mentioned, and I think it's something that added to its appeal: the creativity, the gameplay mechanics, the interface, like everything about it just seems nostalgic in hindsight. And not only that, to a lot of people, 2012 was one of the last really good years that we ever had, before everything started going downhill slowly in the teens decade and before COVID hit. But I honestly feel like Lollipop Chainsaw 2 is something that sounds really interesting. I'm not exactly sure how how the developer Dragami Games is going to approach a sequel. I don't know if it's going to follow the events of the original game. I don't know if it's going to be a prequel. And the reason I say that because I think Juliet Starling, who's like the main protagonist, she was like 18 in that game, and I think she was supposed to graduate or something like that. So I'm not exactly sure how they're going to handle the sequel, whether it's going to be a prequel or whether or not they're just going to use another protagonist altogether that's like connected to her in some way. But either way, Lollipop Chainsaw was a really creative game to a point where like a lot of people were able to look back at it with a different set of eyes, and I guess kind of look at it as one of the more underappreciated games that came out during the early teens. But things are a lot different nowadays. People have different preferences. I don't think hack and slash games are not as popular as they used to be, but I do know that the survival horror genre is starting to have a resurgence in relation to popularity with like Silent Hill and Resident Evil and all these other games that people are like really fond about. And and I don't know. I honestly feel like we're probably not going to see Lollipop Chainsaw 2 until like 2027, 2028, or 2029. But will people be able to afford it by then? Will people be able to afford the PlayStation 6 or the next gen Xbox console by then? Because nowadays corporations really don't give a damn. They're willing to squeeze just about every dollar they can out of players, and I guess do everything they can to make the gaming experience as expensive as they possibly can. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Lollipop Chainsaw, or at least the original game, anyways. it was M rated, and I feel like because of that, it only appealed to a niche audience. I wouldn't necessarily say like a niche audience, but only appealed to. It was supposed to appeal to adult gamers, and the problem with that is most adult gamers are men for the most part. You know, you have more men who play video games than women, and because of that, it's like it's hard for a game like that to sell more than it did back in the day because adults are more critical of video games than children are. If Lollipop Chainsaw was like T rated, it probably could have sold more because you're appealing to both teenagers and adults. You're appealing to a much wider audience. If this game, there was no way in hell this game could have been rated E. It could have been, I guess, rated T at least, but yeah, I feel like making it rated M was really interesting because I feel like the blood and the gore and the violence and all that stuff is one of the main things about Lollipop Chainsaw that makes it appealing. And without that, I mean, it wouldn't have even have sold a million copies back in the day. Um, I honestly feel like nowadays we're living in a time where older IPs are being more appreciated because you're seeing a lot of new stuff come out, and I don't know, they're not clicking with casuals for the most part, or they're not clicking with them as they should. And you have like indie games that come out here and there, and the reason why some of them are good is because they use influence from older video games back in a time period where like certain genres and certain like video game art styles were more popular. And I could definitely say that with like RPGs and Metrovania games and 2D like games and stuff like that. Um, I honestly feel like Lollipop Chainsaw is something that definitely could become popular again if the sequel is handled right. If they focus more on making the game slightly darker and I guess focus more on in-depth storytelling and certain aspects like that, maybe it could be more successful than the original. But as it stands, I feel like Lollipop Chainsaw has a niche audience or a niche fan base, and even if we get like a sequel like within the next couple of years, I don't see it selling significantly more than the original game. We're supposed to be getting an anime series as well sometime in the future. I have no idea when that's coming out. It was never revealed or anything like that. But but yeah, I mean, it's not the end of Lollipop Chainsaw just yet. I don't expect it to fully become a series at the moment, or like a video game series at the moment. It could become one despite, how much the original one didn't sell, but it is what it is. Lollipop Chainsaw 2 looked like it's going to be really interesting. It's most likely going to be on multiple consoles opposed to being exclusive to one. I'm not exactly sure whether or not Lollipop Chainsaw 2 will come to the Switch too. But then again, Lollipop Chainsaw 1 came to Switch too, so you never know. But hopefully we'll learn more details about Lollipop Chainsaw 2 later down the line.